Okay. Thanks a lot for coming back on time. And yeah, sorry, I spent just a couple minutes to transfer the data from Zoom into my folder, and I'll put it in the. I'm going to upload it to YouTube channel. Okay. Right now, in terms of research technique, we have two types of techniques. The first one is qualitative, and the second one is quantitative. Okay. The qualitative basically generates the information in the format of words or opinion. Okay, or sometimes if we use certain techniques such as a projective technique, we may get pictures as the association. Okay, and the popular technique in here includes focus group discussion. Okay. Or observation is another technique of qualitative research, and the other one that I will conduct in my own study is what we call as the in-depth interview. Okay. Now, the beauty of qualitative technique is to get the detail of the problem. Okay, so marketers normally conduct the qualitative techniques if they don't understand the problem. Okay, so therefore qualitative technique is fantastic for us to understand the preliminary issues. Okay, now in terms of quantitative techniques, we normally include a lot of people in here, normally more than 100 people in our research, right? 100 plus. Okay, and sometimes we also use a statistical tool to understand how many people that we need to include in our research. Okay, all right. Now, between these two, okay, again, both of them have different purposes. Okay, the qualitative helps us understanding the problem, initial problem, because the qualitative techniques helps us with the probing. Okay, we can probe the problem to the respondents. Okay, therefore, normally we ask open-ended questions. Okay, instead of asking from 1 to 5, how would you rate our service? Now, that is not the type of qualitative research technique. Yeah. We normally ask, what is your opinion, why, and probe, and we can probe the respondents. Okay, and quantitative basically on the other side, quantitative techniques basically helps us to validate. Okay, to validate whether the information that we collect is accurate or not from the qualitative research. Okay, and we normally ask close-ended questions. Okay, we can ask respondent to rate, score or rate their opinion. Okay, from 1 to 5, how would you rate the service of this hotel, for instance? All right, from 1 to 5, would you agree if I say this brand is fun, for instance? Okay, so that is a typical quantitative research. Okay, look, normally, marketers conduct although there is no rule of thumb, marketers would normally conduct qualitative first before they conduct the quantitative. The reason for that is normally they try to probe the problem, and after that they validate in the quantitative research. Okay, let's look at briefly about the FGD and in-depth interview. The observation, we discussed that. The FGD, focus group discussion, is normally conducted with one moderator. Okay, we have one moderator and one research assistant. Okay, and we normally invite 6 to 10 respondents in the focus group meeting. Okay, and why 6 to 10 respondents? Below 6, it is not that decisive. Larger than 10 or more than 10 respondents, we may have a Flemington market. It may be harder for the moderator to control. Okay, so that's focus group discussion. In-depth interview is a different one. We ask open-ended questions, but it is more into face-to-face, one-on-one interview. Okay, now if you look at that, the in-depth interview is more expensive than focus group discussion But in some instances, if the respondent is not easy to get, then you need to consider in-depth interview. Or if the issue is sensitive, you may want to conduct in-depth interview rather than focus group discussion. For instance, in one of my previous job, the issue is quite sensitive because it is related to certain disease. So we conducted the in-depth interview instead of focus group discussion. Okay. Quantitative, we normally use survey as one of the major tools in quantitative research. We conduct survey, or we can also do questionnaire. Okay. Now, in today's business landscape, a lot of people use online survey technique. Okay, online questionnaire. So they get the respondents' email addresses and they send the link. Okay, so that's one of the things that people can do actually. Okay, right. Supermarkets, yes, you can do that at the supermarkets. I used to do that a lot. We did the buyer tracking after they finish the transaction. We stop them and we have the interview with the respondents. Okay, a good one, Tracy. And sometimes at the supermarket or the shopping mall, we have what we call as CLT, central located tests. Okay, we invite people to come. We invite the people who pass our booth to come to our booth for research. Okay, that's the CLT, central located tests. Okay, all right. So that's basically qualitative and quantitative. Okay, any questions in terms of this technique, qualitative and quantitative?
No.
All right, brilliant. Okay, now let me just briefly discuss about the research plan. I'm going to skip that. Now, okay, this is the research process. Look, the entire research process in here is basically about research design. We call them as research design. Okay, so when we plan, starting from the understanding the problem, we design research plan, we implement it, and we interpret and report the research. Okay, that is included in the research design. Okay, the entire process in here is a research design. Okay, now define the problem. This is normally this is the largest problem. Okay, defining the problem is always the starting point. Okay, in my experience, like what I'm doing now with my own study. The largest problem is basically the understanding the problem. Okay, and I normally spend a lot of time to understand the problem, including when I was at corporate life. And again, if we understand the problem, it is easier for us to convert that into plan. Okay, now if you look at the problem here, where does the problem come from? Yeah, root cause analysis pinpoints issues. All right, that's one. Okay, now where does the problem come from? Look, the problem. To understand the problem, you look at the symptoms. Okay, you can start the symptoms. You can look at your sales trend, for instance. Okay, in my experience, a lot of people may mix up between business problem or marketing problem and research problem. Okay, now research problem. And these two are two different things. Business problem is related to performance, to the performance of the business. Okay, so if we did not achieve sales last month, the month before we did not achieve that, the month before we didn't achieve that, and so on and so forth, that is business problem or marketing problem. Okay, and research problem is actually about the information that we need to collect. Okay, so if you look at that. Let's say our sales is declining, okay? Then the next thing that we need to do is, based on the financial report, we understand our sales is declining, okay? And then the next thing that we need to do is to make a kind of educated guess. Why is that? Okay, is that because of the competitors launching new products? Okay, is that because competitors' brand is perceived better than us? Okay, is that because of product quality? Okay, is that because our customer satisfaction declining? Okay, based on these guesses, right, we convert that into research problem. Okay, Therefore, a research problem here or research problem here would be we need to find out how satisfied customers are. Okay, so research problem in here would be if the data that we analyze suggests that yes, these three are the major factors that affect our business problem. Okay, that our sales declining. These three may be the major factors, right? So we convert that into a research problem. We need to find out the information about competitors' brand, for instance. We need to find out how our product is perceived, how our product quality is perceived. We need to find out how satisfied our customers are with our brand, with our product, with our service, for instance. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea in terms of converting business problem into research problem. Okay, and then we design research plan. Okay, when we say designing a research plan, what does it include? That includes the data that we want to collect. Okay, secondary and primary, the one that we discussed above before in the beginning. Okay, and the technique. Okay, what research technique that we want to use, qualitative or quantitative. Okay, or quantitative. Okay, the sample, right? Who will be our respondents? Okay, who will be our respondents? Okay, how many respondents? Okay, how to collect the respondents? How to collect the respondent? Okay, is that going to be certain techniques? We may need to include certain techniques to collect the respondents. Okay, then we implement the plan. When we say we implement the plan, we actually do the field research. We go to the respondents, we meet them, and so on and so forth. And lastly, we interpret and report the results finding. Okay, right. So that's basically the research design. Okay, which is basically the entire research process. Okay. Any questions about research?
No.
All good. All right. Look, if you don't have any questions about research, I'm going to move on to thanks, Tracy. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is basically the consumer behavior. Okay. Now let me just bring up the file. Oops. Okay. Can you see my file? Okay, I'll stop sharing. Hang on a second. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint slide?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Right. I cannot do the slideshow, but that's fine. Now, look, the next thing I'd like to discuss is the consumer behavior. Consumer behavior basically refers to the purchase performed by consumers for or household or for household consumption or family consumption or individual consumption, right? So if the consumption is for these guys here, right, then we talk about consumer behavior. Okay. Now on the other side, we have what we call as business market behavior, okay, or business behavior, business customer behavior. Okay. Now this one here is actually related to consumption for organization. So if the product or service is for an organization, that means we talk about buyer behavior. Okay. So please make sure that we clearly define that. Okay. Okay, look, one of the things that we need to understand is consumer, right? And we discussed that in our discussion sometime, there you go. We discussed that some time ago when it comes to marketing concept, that consumer is the focal point in the value creation, okay? So we do need to understand consumers a lot, okay? Now, the more we understand the consumers, the better for us, because we can adjust our offering. Okay, remember the process of marketing that we discussed. Okay, and I hope that that will also appear in your assessments. Okay, we discussed that there are 4 steps. Broadly speaking, you can use the ARPA or the 4 steps I discussed last week: the understand, create, communicate, and deliver, and come back to understand. Okay. Now, part of understand is actually understand the consumers, understand the market, and when it comes to market, we are a consumer is part of it. Okay. All right. Now, this is a model of buyer behavior. All right, based on social psychology, stimulus response model. Okay. Here we say that the environment actually gives us the stimulus, right? The marketing stimuli includes all marketing mix variables. If you look at that, the product, price, place, promotion, people, processes, they give the they are the stimuli for our customers. Okay. Now you can imagine that at some point of time, you may push your trolley at the supermarket, for instance, and then you find a product or and you find a price tag, for instance. Okay, that's actually part of the marketing stimuli. All right, and the other thing that can also become a stimulus is, if you look at that, you may recall they are part of the larger societal forces, your pests analysis. Okay, so they give pressure to everybody, including to our consumers, right? Economic, technological, social, cultural, for instance, with the value that the customer shift from A to B, for instance. Okay, they give pressures to our consumers, right? And then that stimulus, those stimuli will be processed in what we call as the buyer's black box. All right, the buyer's black box actually includes the buyer's characteristics and decisions process. Okay, we are going to discuss the decision process in next few slides. Okay, now why do we call it as the buyer's black box? Because it is not easy to understand it. Okay, we have to put the neuromarketing research technique, put the cables here in the consumer's head, and then we'll observe. We observe how the consumers behave when we give certain stimulus. Okay, and the next one is the buyer response, which is basically the response that the buyer gives based on the stimulus that they receive. Okay, now we can observe this one. So the two things that we can observe in this model is basically the environment and also the response of the buyer. Okay, the buyer black box is something that if we do more thorough research, yes, we can understand it, but it's not that easy. Okay, but we do know that the buyer's black box is affected by their characteristics or the personality of the customers, the traits of the customers, and also the way they make decision. Okay, so that's basically a simple model of buyer's behavior. Okay. Now, the next one I'd like to discuss in more detail is this one here. Okay, the decision-making process. Okay, scholars suggest that there are 5 stages of that the customers go through when it comes to making decision. The first one is the problem solving or problem recognition or need recognition. Okay, now this is where the stage where customers are aware of the gap. Okay, the gap of what? The gap between the desired state and the actual state. Okay, so they are aware of the gap. Okay, like hungry, for instance, or thirsty, or when you find someone uses certain product and you find it a better way to solve the problem, then that gives you an understanding of the gap. Okay, and the next thing that the customers do is to search the information. This is where they do some research. Okay, this is where they do some research to get the information. Okay, now in terms of researching, there are several types of sources, but the two that I'd like to discuss are the commercial information. Okay, and the other one is network, the personal network, information from the personal network. Okay, the customer's personal network. The commercial information is basically the one that marketing organizations manage, such as the website, for instance. So when, let's say, you want to buy a new laptop, okay, and you do some research, you do Google, okay, and you get websites, that's when you get the commercial information, either from Mac, from Apple, or from Samsung, or from HP, and so on and so forth. Okay, And you may do you may also contact your personal network, your brother, your sister, or your friends, your relatives, right? You call them, okay, and you have a chat with them. Hey, look, I'm thinking of buying a MacBook. What do you think? Or I'm thinking of buying a Microsoft Surface, for instance, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now these two have different roles. Okay. Commercial information provides with the official information. Okay. Without that, customers may find it hard to make decision. Okay. But the personal network may be more convincing. Okay. If you want to buy, let's say, a car, and you think about buying a certain brand, and suddenly your close friend talk to you, don't buy that one because my boyfriend bought that brand and he regretted it. Right? Look, I bet you would think about it further. Okay. Now, the outcome of the information search is option. We'll get options after we conduct the information search. Okay. That option will go to what we call as the yes, it is more influential. The personal network. Tracy, do you mean the personal network more influential? Yes, personal network will be more influential because it is based on someone that you trust more. Okay, normally, all right. And then the next one is evaluation of alternatives. Okay, evaluation of alternatives in here. Basically, the process of when we juggle the weight, okay, pluses and minuses of all options that we have. Oops, wrong symbol. Pluses and minuses. What are the aspects that we look at? Everything. We look at the product, we look at the price, we look at the distributor, we look at the promotion, okay? We look at everything, including the sales rep, okay? Including the sales reps, okay? Including the building, for instance, right? Including the store, okay? Sometimes, yes, we may decide, yes, we want to buy a certain brand of car, okay? But we're not happy to buy the car from that dealer, because the sales rep in there is rude, for instance. So we go to another dealer, okay? And then the next one is purchase. This is when the customers make purchase decision. Yep, I'm going to buy this. Now, that purchase decision can still be influenced, okay? If you look at car sales rep, they may contact you, okay? They may offer you, okay, why don't you test drive, right? Along the way of your test drive, the sales guy is trying to convince you, okay? And last one is post-purchase evaluation. Here, we say the customers is making decision whether they're happy or not, whether they're satisfied or not, okay? If they're satisfied, they're going to recommend it. They may recommend it to their relatives or friends, okay? If they're not satisfied, well, they're going to talk about bad things on the purchase, okay? Now, if you look at that question, do customers always go through these 5 stages when it comes to making decision? Do they always go through every single stage when it comes to making decision? Okay. Not really. Okay, fair enough. The answer is correct. Not really. Okay, because yep, some people bypass the information. Exactly. We as consumer may skip 2-3 stages. Okay. Okay. I like the term impulse buying. That's one of the things that that we also that also happens to us. Okay. There are 3 types of decision making. The first one is habitual decision making. Okay. This is what Tracy just mentioned as impulse buying. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Like the choices at the checkout, for instance. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, habitual decision making. We make decision, but we skip a few steps. In here, we skip a few steps. Okay, we skip. Okay, why is that? Because the risk is low. Okay, the risk is low. Okay, risk in terms of what? Social risk and financial risk. Okay, it's quite low. So, why is that low? Because the value is low, and also we have the experience in buying this kind of product. Okay, so that that comes under habitual decision making. On the other side, we have what we call as extended decision making. Extended decision making. Okay. In the case of the extended decision making, we go through all stages comprehensively. Okay. Why is that? Because the risk is quite high. Okay. Risk is quite high. High risk. Okay. High risk in terms of what? Social and financial. Okay. Car, for instance, is an example. So if that's the case, then we as a consumer go through every single stage in here. Okay. Now in between, we have what we call as moderate decision making. Okay. Moderate decision making. Why moderate? Because the risk is also moderate. Okay. The risk is moderate. Okay. What does it mean? We still go through all stages, but not comprehensively. But not comprehensively. Okay, we still go through every single stage, okay, but not that comprehensively. Now, a different person may perceive the risk differently. Okay, some people may say buying a mobile gadget is, requires them to think a lot. Okay, some other people say, yeah, I've been buying that. Let me just check a few things to confirm, and after that they push the button to buy. Okay. Right, so hopefully that gives you an illustration in terms of consumer decision making. Okay, any questions so far?
No.
All good?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Look, so that's the next thing is basically the explanation of the decision making. Can I also suggest for you to look at the level of involvement, low, high level of involvement, which is basically related to the risk, okay, associated to the purchase, that determine whether it is high involvement or low level of involvement. Again, it goes back to risk, okay, financial and social risk, okay. The other thing that I'd like to show you is, I'm not going to discuss this. That's the impulse buying that Tracy talked about. Thanks a lot, Tracy. And the other thing that I'd like to show you is the situational influences on buying decision process. Okay, there are several factors affecting us, affecting our decision-making process, the situation, psychological, and personal. Okay, please go through these topics. Okay. Because they are related to your assessment 3. Okay, in your assessment 3, you are also required to analyze consumer behavior. Okay, that includes these guys here. Okay, right. Any questions, comments?
No.
No, all good.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for joining me today, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.